Dave Brock, creator of the Hawkwind legend,
Yes.
which is now 33...
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Which now spans 33 years, about 100 albums plus, and about 30 odd personnel changes. Going right back to the start, when you think of Hawkwind, Hawkwind is banks of speakers, audio generators, but going back a bit further to your start, you began as a busker.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Take us back to those days in the 60s.
Well, I used to do cinema cues and theatre cues in the West End,
Right.
sort of Lyceum. I think when the Pink Floyd played at the Lyceum in 1968, I think it was, somewhere around there, I made quite a lot of money because the queue went all the way down the Strand. It took me 2 hours doing this queue.
Right.
I lost my voice at the end of it all for singing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to make quite a good living out of it, you know.
And you would do busker type songs?
Yeah, old blues numbers and
Right.
jazz sort of stuff, you know.
That was my next question, because the first sort of creation of Hawkwind that was going to be Hawkwind Zoo was Hurry on Sundown, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A demo for that,
Yeah.
Which you wrote, and
That
is
was a
very,
busking number. That.
yeah, but it's got a blues format, hasn't it? You
Yeah.
repeat the first line twice and stuff.
Yeah.
So blues was obviously a big part of your formative years.
Yeah.
What kind of bands were you sort of listening
Well, before that, I used to. I mean, I played. We had a few bands, sort of blues bands and all that. In fact, Mick Vernon on Mediate Records, we got 4 tracks out on his label. The
right.
Dharma Blues Band, it was
to?
called.
Right.
With a guy called Mike King, who was a wonderful boogie piano player,
Right.
who learnt from a guy called Pete Johnson, who's one of the great legends. Albert
Mhm.
Ammons, Pete
Mhm.
Johnson, one of the
Mhm.
big legends of boogie
Right.
piano playing. And Mike learnt how to play off of him in Canada, and I played with Mike over at Ill Pie Island Jazz Club in Twickenham
With the Dharma Blues Band?
with the Dharma Blues
So that
Band.
was really your first band?
Well, there's other ones before that, but that was the one where we actually sort of things started going on
Right.
from there. You know,
Right.
I played in blues clubs and jazz clubs. Played in a jazz band for a while, banjo first
Right.
off. That's how I started playing banjo, you know.
Yeah.
And then it sort of progressed from there to busking. And then, you know, it got hard going because Don Partridge come along and had his hit single Rosie.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden there was loads of guys thinking they were going out on the streets, and we used to have all these bad scenes with them, telling them to fuck off, you know. It's my
Territory
pitch,
wars,
yeah,
yeah,
it was all
yeah,
that. It
yeah.
was, and it got really hectic, and then, you know, then I decided to sort of form Hawkwind.
Right.
And that's
If
how
we can just talk about
Yeah.
that scene, the Don Partridge scene, there was actually, you went on a tour together.
Oh
didn't
yeah,
you?
we did the Buskers tour in a
Yeah.
double-decker bus, yeah.
Right. All over England, yeah?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Played at the Albert Hall as well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you were part of that, you are a Londoner, aren't you? But you were
Yeah.
part of the Ladbroke scene in the late 60s,
Yeah.
which was a political scene in certain ways, wasn't it?
It was a change. I mean, well, you know, sort of change.
Friends, the newspaper Friends,
That's
and,
right,
and anarchist groups, White Panthers.
That's right, yeah.
How did you did you gravitate to a scene like that, or you?
Well, most of the guys I knew were working or were involved in all these different sort of situations, you know.
Right.
I mean, we had so many contacts because it was quite a web of intrigue, you know, Notting Hill Gate in that time. It was, you know, where everybody lived. Yeah, we got involved with the bomb squad because of, you know, our anarchic sort of situations. We got raids, we were always being stopped.
Right.
In our
You were
van.
raided as well, were you? Yeah.
Oh yeah, we stopped all the time, you know. I
Right.
mean, it happened for years on end. You know, I
Right.
was blacklisted. I mean, most of the members of the band were blacklisted and always
Really?
being stopped, you know, showing driving licences, you know, just me and made to feel that the police knew where we were and what was going on, you know.
Right.
Very
So
annoying.
branded as outlaws from the start.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we weren't peace-loving hippies, you know. People always think, oh yeah, we used to take loads of LSD and, you know, we're all peace and love, but we were involved in lots of different things. You know, lots of change we were involved with.
Right.
Greenpeace, we were involved with them for quite a few years, you know.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of gigs we did free. A lot of the money went into sort of different coffers for
Yeah.
revolutionary ideas.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with after the Dharma Blues Band, then there was Famous Cure, which actually got a hit
Yeah.
record in Holland, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That
Um,
was quite strange. Well, we went over to Holland. We actually toured with a big circus tent. You know, it was the rock and roll circus. We were the B band, you know, because they had all the major Dutch bands playing. There was Golden Earrings, QB and the Blizzards, a few other sort of well-known names. Golden Earrings still going, I think.
Yeah,
aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
And we used to sort of just play psychedelic freak out music, really, you know, lots of one notes and one strings.
Right.
And that's how I met Nick Turner, because he was working, putting the tent up. That's how I actually met him. And then...
Can we focus on that? What was your first impression of this? What's going to be a great performance artist and musician in the Hawkwind band? What was your very first impression of him?
What, of Nick?
Yeah. Was he the Viking in the sunset?
I can't remember him at all, actually, at that point. No, honestly, it was just yet another face, because, I mean, you know, in the band at the time we had Mick Slattery, John Illingworth, and we had a Dutch drummer.
Right.
I mean, we used to hang out in the right places, really, in Amsterdam. I mean, I lived in Amsterdam. Before all this, I actually went over there and sort of used to go busking in Amsterdam too. I lived there for about 4 months.
This is in '69?
This was in the sort of about 65.
Oh, right.
65 to 67, because there was a lot of rioting going on as well. There's a lot of scenes going on in Holland, because it's a long story. Do you want me to go into all this?
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, yeah.
Well, after the war, you know, there's a lot of quislings were in high places in the government and so on, and they actually kept their places for many years in the Dutch government. Of course, a lot of young people actually found out about this and wanted them sort of taken from power, you know.
Right.
So there was a lot of left-wing scenes going on in all the papers. So there was a lot of rioting in the streets, and the police were really quite brutal. They used to come in whacking people left, right and centre.
Right.
Old men, I've seen old blokes getting knocked to the ground, kicked, women, kids, the whole sort of thing. And it brought the government down in '67, you know, all the riots. A big change happened in Holland then, you know. And we were sort of there at that time, really.
Right. You were attracted to that kind of scene? Was it an inspiration for you in a certain way?
No, it was, well, you were young, you know, wanted to change
wanted to
things.
be where the
everybody,
action was,
yeah, I mean, you know, because, you know, you felt like there was a lot of other people who thought the same. You know, you've got to have change. You can't have things being set and staged. You've always got to continually. That's why this band's probably forever changing, you know, because it's a good thing to change. Build things up and then you have to tear them down, really. That's a good way of law, really.
And when did you start thinking in terms of, whilst you were in Famous Cure, when did you start, there was Group X after that, was that?
Well, after the Famous Cure, we came back to England and things fizzled out, really, you know. That's when I sort of went off busking. I mean, I was working as a gas board fitter's mate, actually.
Right.
I used to ride my bicycle off to in Fulham, where I lived, on my bike to the gasworks every morning.
Oh, God,
I did that for about a year and a half, you know, which was rather tedious.
I can imagine, after the freedom of Amsterdam.
Yeah, and I used to sort of still plonk around on my guitar, and then I decided I'd, you know, start playing in the streets and all that, which was far better. Which I did, and then that's when I sort of I met up with John Harrison, because I used to go busking in Tottenham Court Road subway, which used to, you know, run from Charing Cross Road, and I used to play down there because I used to play a lot of blues stuff. And that's how I met John, who was quite an enthusiast. And John Harrison used to play with the Joe Lost band. He was the bass player from Joe Lost band, believe it or not. You know, yeah. I mean, he's a young guy, John was, you know, and. You know, we used to talk a lot, and he'd, you know, come round, and we'd used to go off down the pub, have a drink and all that. And
what kind of blues did you play in that sort of busking situation? Any number that springs to mind, you know?
Dealing with the devil, old Sonny Boy Williams and stuff. Gosh, you know, Snooks Eagley, I mean, all these characters.
So you were heavily into blues then?
Yeah, Sonny, Terry Brown and McGee and all this, you know, Muddy Waters, all stuff like that, you know. Then, of course, I met up with John, and we used to sort of sit around my house. He'd play his bass, I played his, you know, electric guitar.
Right.
And then sort of Mick Slattery used to come round, and Mick was sort of like a good lead guitarist, Mick. And he used to play a bit like Jimi Hendrix, so we had this little thing going, you know. And then we put an advert in the Melody Maker, and we got Terry Ollis, who was working. His dad was a scrap dealer, so he had a scrap yard, and he come and joined up with us. And we used to rehearse in a music shop where I used to live, which was a guy called Bob Kerr, who used to be in the Bonzo Dog Doodah band. I used to work with that, and the New Vaudeville band.
Yeah, Bob Kerr's Whoopie band.
That's right, yeah, still going too. I actually saw him about 2 years ago down at Bude Jazz Festival.
Right.
And we used to rehearse in the basement of his music store, you know, which was on the corner of the street.
And that was as Group X?
Well, we didn't have a name then, you see. It was just like the start of the
Right.
band, which became Group X. We decided to call it Group X, you
Right.
know. And we used to play around Notting Hill Gate for nothing. And then sort of Nick come along and he had a van. And
So you'd hooked up with him before, and he turned up in London.
He turned up in London, and we met up with him, and he worked as our roadie, basically, you know.
Right.
And then Dick Mick, who I also knew from Richmond, I've known Dick Mick for quite a few years too, come along. Well, actually, it was a bit later because Dick Mick didn't have his generator then. He used to help out with our gear, you know.
Right.
And then we suddenly discovered that Nick, you know, could play a bit of saxophone. It was like avant-garde, going, you know, and stuff like that. He couldn't play it properly. He could just sort of do runs up and down, and that was it. So we decided to ask Nick to come and join us, and then it was Hawkwind Zoo. We decided to call it Hawkwind. Was the idea? It was two names. There was the mythological name, which was better to be the hawk that flies over the forest than the eagle that flies over the mountain. And the other thing was Hawkwind was Nick Turner's. He was always going like this and gobbing, you know. So it's hawking, it was called, you know. And he also used to fart a lot. He was a terrible guy for farting, you know. So that was the wind. So it was a bit of a joke, Hawkwind.
You played wind instruments.
Yeah. So that was sort of part and parcel of how it actually got called that.
Yeah.
And then Dick Mick joined up with us and got an audio generator.
So that must have been a crucial sort of stage. Did you have a vision of, you know, what the next 2 years were going to be? You know, the space rock thing that it developed into. You know, at that time, blues was already on the way out. The blues boom was really sort of flagging, and there was kind of like prog rock and possibly the starts of a bit of glitter. Did when you formed Hawkwind Zoo, you know, could you see the future?
Well, no, because we never used to think ahead. I mean, we only live for now, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, even so, like, exactly the same now. I mean, you never know what's going to occur, so you never think, I mean, yeah, we do, okay, we know we're going to play at a few festivals here, there.
Right.
Now we know we could do a tour, you know, and so on. But then it was just like day by day, you know. I mean, we'd get gigs, well, we'd play for nothing all the time, you see. The other thing was we'd actually, well, I never used to turn up sometimes because I'd make more money busking than I would with the band, you know.
Right.
And we'd had Doug Smith as our manager then because we got involved with Clearwater Productions. They had, this is a guy, Max Taylor. Now, Max Taylor's head of Lloyd's, you know. Do you know all about this? I'll show you something else later on. Because we get all these things in the well, I'll show you later on. Go off at a tangent.
Yeah, right.
But there was Max Taylor, Wayne Bardell, Doug Smith, and they had a company called Clearwater Productions. They had a band called Cochise, which, who is it? I can't remember the guy's name. BJ Cole, slide guitarist, really very famous guy now.
Yeah.
They had another band called Skin Alley, High Tide, which was quite a very famous band, where Simon House used to play in that.
Yeah.
And
BJ Cole's Alabama 3 now, isn't he?
He might well be, yeah. He wears
Alabama
horn ring
3.
glasses. I know he's quite. He must be the same age as me.
Yeah, he's played slide on Alabama.
Is
3.
he?
Yeah.
He's a wonderful character.
Yeah. Sting as well. Yeah.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's how we actually got involved because we were playing in like I say Notting Hill Gate. Psychedelic was all psychedelia going on there, you know.
Right.
We just used to have a strobe going all the time, and Doug Smith had come down and thought, yeah, they sound quite good. We'd get them signed to our little, you know, sort of agency and management. And that's how we sort of got started, really, in that sort of sense, you know.
Right. And how did you get the record deal?
Well, Douglas got that. I think he did a deal with the whole of the bands that you had. Cochise, Skin Alley, High Tide and us all got signed to United Artists.
Right.
I mean, we were sort of down the bottom of the pile. We were like, you know, the boys at the bottom. All the rest of them were all quite good musicians, and they were all sort of playing proper places, and we used to just play everywhere, you know.
Right.
So
free festivals mainly.
Yeah.
That was part of your philosophy. Very much the free festival music is a free thing.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I mean, we were into, you know, all these like turning up, playing for free, and people to book halls, get us to play. The proceeds to go to, you know, like say Greenpeace or anti-vivisection, all this sort of stuff.
Right,
But we were actually floating them, really, you know.
Did you know about Nick's performance artist tendencies when you first met him? Did you know that that was going to come later on?
No. Well, that was, I mean, you got to remember at the time, I mean, a lot of people used to take lots of LSD and, you know, used to be quite over the top, really. And I mean, we used to look like quite a weird bunch anyway, you know. At the time, I suppose, really, as time went on, you know, when Lemmy joined, we were quite an unusual bunch of characters.
But before then, there was Bob Calvert.
Bob Calvert came along probably about 90. He was around, but he actually started working with us probably about 72 around that time then, you know.
Right.
Because that's when him and me wrote Silver Machine together then, you see.
Right.
I had to do it under non de plume to try and get some money out of the record label, you know. So, so I had to do it under another name.
Because otherwise they wouldn't have paid you?
Well, I refused to actually, I did it under a non de plume. I did it under my wife's maiden name at the time, you know. So as that I would actually get a contract, separate contract, and eventually got the money from United Artists, and we got a mortgage on a house then, you know. So I started stepping up the ladder of, you know, in the treadmill.
Yeah. And that song you wrote as an album track, as part of it was a live number, it was all of those things.
Yeah, it was, I mean, you know, well, I mean, Bob and me, over the years, we wrote a lot of stuff together. I mean, we wrote quite a few hundred numbers, you know. I mean, we worked together quite a lot. I mean, Nick was only in the band, in the 32 years, he only actually played in Hawkwind 7 years, you know.
Right.
That was it. I mean, over the period of years that Bob was sort of in and out doing his own projects, he'd sort of do West End, he used to do West End shows, write scripts for different shows, and he was doing his solo albums, he used to do solo singles. And, I mean,
but you were always open to ideas that would sort of broaden the platform. So Michael Moorcock, when he appeared at the A40 Ladbroke Grove, you just asked him up on stage. That was always the band's attitude.
Yeah, well, that was. I mean, when we played, we used to play under the flyover at Portobello Road, under the flyover there. And Michael lived in Notting Hill Gate, and he came down. Of course, I used to read all his books, you know. And he said, wow, you know, it's quite a great honour to meet him, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, do you think I could, you know, Nick actually introduced me to Mike, you know, and said, oh, you know, this is Mike Moorcock, and all of us shook hands with him. And he said, you know, could I come and recite some poetry on stage, you know? And so we said, yeah, it'd be a great honour. And that's how we got involved with Michael, you know, and over the years he wrote stuff with us, and, you know, still doing it, he's doing some at the moment, you know.
And the Greasy Tuckers album, that was...
The Roundhouse,
that was where Silver Machine, the essential... Now, how did it get from that to this fabulously mixed single, which it was? I mean, so the production of it was...
I don't know, you know, it's just one of those things that happened, really, you know. It's just fate, I think. That's all it was, fate. We just happened to be doing something at the right time for it all just to click in place. I think that's the way with most bands, you know, unless you've got a big company laying loads of money in you and promoting. Most things just occur through fate and things happening, you know, and coming together.
And you got a lot of radio airplay with it? Did it happen on its own? Was it one of those that was just good enough to happen on its own? Do you remember how it... Because it got to the top 3, didn't it?
I don't know, really. I mean, it's hard to know, really. It's just one of those things that occurred. I mean, we were like, most of our gigs were sold out. I mean, we were, you know, because we used to have a huge, great freak following of, you know, hippies and bohemians and characters like that coming to see us play. So consequently, places were always full up. So I mean, you know, there's a lot of interest in the media, because of what we were doing. And of course, we used to do loads of benefits and all that, you know. Well, here we are.
Dave, it's 20 minutes since I asked my last question. Unfortunately, an April shower has meant that we've come right into the nerve centre and the hub of Hawkwind operations, your studio here in Devon.
Yes.
And I think my last question went right back to 1970 and the Isle of Wight festival. You were
That's right, yeah.
You were a sort of fringe act there, weren't you?
We were, yeah. We played outside there because of the costs, I think. All the big stars were being flown in by helicopter, and we played outside.
Were you billed as being on the festival?
Oh, no. I mean, we just turned up there in our old van and set our gear up, you know, and played. Actually, had a little generator, and just played outside.
And the Silver Machine theme began there with Nick Turner painting himself silver.
Yeah, well, he that's where he got noticed. Actually, I think it was Jimi Hendrix. Actually, said, "I'm going to dedicate this number to the guy with the silver face," because he had half a silver face then, you know.
Right.
But I don't think it was anything to do with Silver Machine at the time. I don't think we'd even written it then. Anyway, that was in 1970s, a bit later on.
Right. And if we sort of move forward to the debut album, were you happy with that album as it
What, the first one?
Yeah, the debut.
Yeah, actually it was very good because we had Dick Taylor from the Pretty Things sort of was basically keeping an eye on us to make sure we behaved properly, and he was a great help, you know, because he had a lot of experience in studios.
Right.
So yeah, he was a great character, Dick. You know, he played 12-string actually on some of the tracks as well.
Right. And the Hawkwind act, you know, that involved mime artists and everything that was just coming in, performance artists. How did that come together? Stacia, when was she sort of...
Stacia, now we met up with Stacia I think in the 70s actually. She was working as a petrol pump attendant actually in Exeter.
Right.
And I don't know, I think we just stopped there to fill up with some petrol on our way down to Cornwall, and somewhere we got talking to her, and I think Nick invited her to the gig, you know, that we were doing, and she ended up there taking her clothes off and dancing. You know, people used to do a lot of that in the psychedelic age of taking their clothes off, you know, feeling free.
Yeah, yeah. And so she was in the band?
Yeah, she'd sort of, well, you know, she kept her job for a bit longer, I think, and then packed it all up and come and toured with us then for the next few years.
And then there was the Roundhouse gig and the Greasy Truckers album.
Yeah.
And that's really the first turning point, it's got to be, isn't it? Suddenly a band that was into free festivals and was in about all the non-business side of things is suddenly in the top 10, in the top 3, and the money hassles must have followed pretty soon. The pressure on a follow-up, that kind of thing. Was that the case?
Well, yeah, in a way it did, because well, most of our money we actually invested back into our light show, you see. I mean, we actually weren't making a lot of money individually, because we always used to sort of plough it back into our gear. I mean, we had a huge, great PA system with all these fantastic paintings all over. I mean, we had Barney Bubbles. I mean, sort of Barney did a lot of our design work and all that. He's a great artist.
You always thought in terms of set designs of taking it further than just a band?
It was like a more of a big community sort of situation, you know, like it was a big entourage wherever we went. We had an entourage of people, you know, because he used to, like I say, we were quite weird characters, you know, so we'd actually attract lots of weird characters. A lot of them were right nuisances, you know, and pain in the arses, but you know, it was quite artistic in a sense. You know, I mean, you get a lot of artistic characters, and let's say Tony Carrero, who was a mime artist. He come and worked with us. He worked with us again in the 80s when we did the Elric tour. You know, he was Elric. You know, in that. And we had quite a few other. We had a couple of girls from America that used to dance. You know, and we just sort
Michael
of.
Moorcock, he came along. as well.
He'd come along, do some sort of poems, and he'd sing with us on albums.
Now, did you get, after Silver Machine, did you get the stock record company response? What are you going to do for a follow-up?
I don't know, I can't remember much about all of that.
Right, the Urban Guerrilla came out. Guerrilla came out.
Well, that was the one. Urban Guerrilla was the follow-up to Silver Machine, and then, of course, unfortunately, you know, the IRA were on a bombing campaign, and sort of, obviously, United Artists, I should say, not EMI. But UA really thought that, you know, because of the words of the song, which is totally relevant now, I think I said that in the record collector, you know, they are totally relevant. So, I mean, stuff that Bob was writing, nothing's changed. Look at what's going on in Palestine. I won't go on, but I mean, you know, it's, we're talking about 100 years ago. The same things have been occurring, like the First World War, you know, it happened in Sarajevo with the first assassination, that's how that started. And nothing's really changed, you know, you think the same things are occurring, like a cycle, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
You've got, you know, the Arabs getting their own land back, and now you've got Israel, and nothing's changed. Unfortunately, the human beings don't have that sort of
perspective
to actually change. You know, they get bigger weapons, but anyway, I won't go on. So,
but the upshot of it was about Urban Guerrilla. The upshot of it was that United Artists wanted to withdraw it just when you had a good
We had a good single
that
good
was
words.
selling well.
Yeah, it would have gone up into the top 10. You know, we'd hired our profile, and then you know, things would have gone on. We probably would have, you know, ended up being one of the big sort of superstar bands. Who knows?
Right.
Consequently, you know, things didn't work out like that.
Yeah. That must have been a great disappointment in a way.
I don't think it bothered us. We were a bit cross at the time, but you know, we weren't that sort of we weren't fazed by all the things that used to go on, because we used to live day by day, you know. I mean, it wasn't, people would say it's a career, but it wasn't a career. I don't regard playing music as a career. It's like a pleasurable sort of thing. I mean, it's hard work because you've got to practice, but it's different, you know. It's like being an artist. You paint pictures. You wouldn't say, you know, it's a career.
Yeah.
It's not like sort of working at the gas board like I used to, you know.
Yeah. What are your first memories of Lemmy?
Lemmy. First memories of Lemmy. Well, he didn't have a bass actually to start with.
Right.
We had, I think we gave him a bass because he didn't have one. We had this old bass, and Lemmy ended up playing that. And then he sort of progressed from there onwards, you know.
Right.
I think it was Dick Mick actually. I mean, we were having trouble. We had Dave Anderson, who was the bass player for Amon Dual, playing with us then. And Dave was sort of on a different scale from us. I mean, he had a sports car. He lived a bit of a different lifestyle, you know, because we were pretty, you know, all hard up all the time.
Right.
So there was that little bit of sort of resentment, you know, of not being one of us syndrome with him. So he was given the elbow, and then he come and joined up with us, you know.
Right. And he had a lot of exposure for Silver Machine, didn't he?
Lemmy.
He ended up singing it.
We all tried it, yeah. And Lemmy ended up singing it. So maybe, you know, that was the start of it all. Maybe, you know, you never know. It's fate.
Yeah.
And I mean, Lemmy, you know, everything was 100% for the band, you know, for the good of united. It's like a united front.
Right.
I mean, you know, in this business we're in, people are always trying to divide you all the time.
Right.
You get a united band, you get someone ear rolling somebody else, you know. And that's how it ended up years later. People stabbing each other in the back trying to get rid of him because he's not playing properly. But anyway, that's later.
Yeah. But even so, Lemmy, looking back, remembers that there was a bit of jealousy from certain parts of the band, that the exposure that he got for Silver Machine. Do you remember it being like that?
No, not really.
No.
You know, it didn't really bother us that much. I mean, him and me used to get on really well because, I mean, you know, we used to play very well together. I mean, we were sort of, you know, very close.
Right.
So, I mean, it was me who had to go and tell him that his days were numbered. Well, his day was numbered, you know, because nobody else wanted to do it, and I was real close. Very sad. Sad day.
Right. But before that came all the sort of difficulties about the fact that, basically, putting it simply, the rest of you were acid freaks, and here we had a speed freak.
Used to take loads of speed, so we'd be all, you know.
The two did not.
It used to cause problems.
Merge.
Yeah, it wasn't. You know, well, everybody used to take their different things, and it wasn't like that. Sometimes it was bad tempers and, you know, crotchety. You know, all these little things that used to become mountains. Really, you know, they're very small, really.
Right.
But as time goes on, they become quite, you know, mountains, and people get resentful.
Right.
Lemmy and Nick didn't get on very well. You know, and Nick used to play continuously through vocals on his saxophone in the wrong key. You know, I threw a can of beer at him on the head one night on stage. Really used to piss us off, you know. We used to tell him, make sure you stop playing when we're doing the vocals, you know. Okay, right. Do the
But
vocals.
it was a jazz man's attitude, was it? The modern jazz attitude. That you
a bit of an ego thing, you know.
Right.
He had a bit of a problem because as we become more famous, his ego become even bigger, you know. I mean, this is what goes on in this business, you know. Me, you know, you don't talk as we, it becomes I. When I decided, instead of when we decided, you know. And so consequently, you know, you get a lot of resentment. And
but as you were saying, the band was, from about 72 to 74, was, to all intents and purposes, a band
it
getting
was very
on.
united,
You know, and there were big shows, Space Ritual, live and things.
Yeah.
You were suddenly, say, doing tours in America where you're playing 8,000, 12,000 seaters, and you've got bands supporting you.
Yeah.
Again, sort of contrasting that with where you came from only 4 years earlier, the free festivals, the fringe events, etc. Did you feel comfortable in that kind of venue?
Well, it was quite, yeah, I mean, you accommodate it. I mean, okay, it's a bit nerve-wracking, you know. I mean, it's like everything's taken care of. You know, you're living in the false world of the rock business, you know, where you've got your roadies. You know, I never used to touch my guitar. I think it was tuned up, you know, and you go on stage, you know what goes on in this business. And it was quite strange, really, living a high lifestyle of anything we wanted, we can have. I mean, we stayed in the Hilton in Detroit with Joe Walsh, and the Eagles were staying there. We were staying there. Was Man, Funkadelic. I think all these bands were staying. It was like a madhouse, you know, loads of girls running around everywhere, loads of drugs. I mean, it was like a really strange place to be in. You're like, Christ.
But you took it day by day as you
we
have
just go on, you know, on to the next one, and you know.
But then in the mid-70s, in a very short space of time, you lost Lemmy and Nick Turner. Now that's got to be quite a sort of change in the band's outlook. How did you get over that sort of rocky phase?
Well, I mean, with the Lemmy syndrome, it was difficult because he was very important to the band. You know, he's one of the great wills, really. You know, and when he went, we had Paul Rudolph because he used to play in the Pink Fairies. I mean, both Pink Fairies and Hawkwind used to always be doing the free festivals together. I mean, they were the two bands that used to do most of the festivals.
Yeah, right.
Consequently, you know, Nick was, you know, a big buddy of Paul Rudolph's and all that. So, I mean, consequently, he wanted Paul in the band, sort of thing, you know.
Right.
And then the sound changed. It went sort of funky in like '76. You know, that album that we released then was sort of funky. I didn't like that. You know, sort of sound.
Which album were you specifically?
Amazing Sounds.
Right, yeah.
That one. You know, I didn't really like it. I was much more spacey, into more electronics and, you know, good sort of heavy rock chords and stuff like that, rather than being all, you know, funky and all that. So that was that bit.
Quite soon after that, you moved from United Artists as well, and then there was that weird phase where you lost the rights to the name for a while.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of strange things going on, really, you know, because we'd done a tour of America. Bob had freaked out. I mean, we did a tour of Europe, whereas Bob was really on form over there, you know, and he was really fantastic, really. Hard to explain. Bob used to suffer from mental problems, really, which was a real shame. He was genius, you know, and so consequently he'd be really down for maybe a few months and really high. He used to, you know, have to take sort of tablets to try and middle him out, really, you know. So at that point we were signed to Charisma then, I think it was. We actually signed to Charisma for 3 years. And then we did a tour of America, which we had Simon House playing with us. Well, he'd been playing with us for about the past 5 years.
Right.
And he got a chance of joining up with David Bowie in America, which he took, because obviously it was a lot more money and the band were on a bit of decline. Everybody was really worried about Bob because he was on a downer, you know, he was standing on stage like this, and he could, you know, really affect all the rest of the band because he was the front man and he was, you know, and we were all sort of feeling down with him, you know.
Oh dear.
That's when it all really come to a stop in 1977. That's when I sold my guitar to this guy, you know, that had been a fan for years. Gave up. I didn't see Adrian Shaw for about 10 years after that. Finished the tour in San Francisco.
Right.
And I saw him walking down the street. I never saw him again for 10 years. And I mean, I sold my guitar. We're really on a low point, you know, where it was like, say, Bob came back to England and went into a mental institution, you know.
Right.
So that looked like the end, as it were, you know.
And you also lost your name.
Yeah, it was a contractual thing, you know, with Charisma and all that. And we had a bit of a argy-bargy about that, and Bob and me decided to do Metropolis and do it as the Hawk Lords, you know. That was the next grand scheme that we had. And so we started writing the next stage show, which was Metropolis, you know, doing a show on the road with 6 dancers and this big sort of scaffolding and all the works, you know, which is quite a big thing to take on the road. And then we did that for a year, and then we just, you know, went back to being Hawkwind again because it all sort of calmed down a bit, and all legal things were all sorted out, and off we went, you know.
Right. And then the next project was very soon afterwards involved Ginger Baker with the Levitation album.
Yeah, that's right. That was when unfortunately Simon King had a bit of a drug problem and he couldn't keep it together anymore, you know, which is a real shame. I mean, yeah, you see, you get very close to. I mean, you think a lot of the guys, even now. I mean, we know, each of us knows our characters, and
Right.
more than your wife would, you know, because you know true characters. You've seen
Yeah.
people freaking out, having tantrums, you know, all the whole sort of
Yeah.
works, and you do get very close. You know, there's a big camaraderie in
Yeah.
the band. And with Simon, it was very sad because, like I say, he had a drug problem and he couldn't keep it together. And Marianne, Hugh Lloyd-Lancter's wife, was managing Ginger at the time. And she said, well, why don't we get Ginger Baker to come and play drums? Because we were in the middle of recording an album at the Roundhouse Studios, because we had signed a deal with Bronze Records.
Right.
And we said, yeah. And I mean, it's quiet. I thought, Christ, Ginger Baker, you know, like he's one of the world's great drummers. And we were all sort of quite nervous about meeting him and playing with him, you know, because of his great reputation. So Ginger came down, great character, you know, bit of a grouchy guy he is, you know, Ginger is.
Crotchety.
Yeah, very crotchety, but you know, he's all right. Though,
Yeah.
you know, he's
But you liked his drumming enough that Simon
yeah.
had put down some tracks prior to that, and you
Yeah.
actually asked Ginger Baker to
that's right,
to redo those as well.
it,
Yeah.
and we did all that, which he did really easily, you know,
Yeah.
and got it all together, and then he joined us for a year, and that's how it went on. You
Yeah.
know.
But listening to that album, Levitation,
Yeah.
that also, sort of maybe the benefit of hindsight, but it also marked quite a journey away from the space rock. It sounds a bit more American rock
Yeah,
in its
probably
feel,
so,
you know.
yeah.
So were you happy about that?
I don't know. I haven't listened to any of these things for years.
Right.
I never listened to. Once we've done albums, I go on to something else. You know,
Yeah.
I never, very rarely ever listen to old stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, Richard quite often says, "Oh, you ought to listen to some of these old tracks, get
Yeah.
an idea again." I said, "Well, not really. I'm not trying to get back there again. You know,
Yeah.
you just carry on."
Yeah.
So maybe then, like with Bronze, we were signed to Bronze, who was, you know, trying to hire our profile, getting us into the progressive rock, you know, good boys
Right.
side of things, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, you're right in
And the-
saying that, yeah.
The Ginger Baker thing was always seen to be something temporary, was it? Was it?
Yeah,
or
I
were you
think so.
hoping? You know, were you hoping that perhaps this might?
Well, it was quite weird because Harvey and Ginger didn't get on too well, because Ginger really wanted, I think at some point or other, he wanted Jack Bruce to play with us, because we'd done a TV show in Germany and they met up, and well, Jack and Ginger had been at loggerheads for years, and Jack was doing this TV show as well, and everybody thought they were going to fight each other when they saw each other, and they suddenly put their arms around each other and shook hands, and they actually did a jam on this TV show.
Right.
And then I think Ginger had mentioned maybe trying to get Jack to come and play instead of Harvey, you know, and
Right.
he'd had a meeting with everybody in the band, and you know, said, look, we're going to get rid of Harvey, which Harvey was a mate of mine who I couldn't do anything so bad as to stab him in the back and get rid of him. I said, no, sorry, Ginger, you're the one who's going.
Right.
You
Right.
So Ginger went, oh, bollocks then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the last time I saw Ginger, was all his gear was being loaded into Kingsley Ward, who owns Rockfield Studio, into his horse box, and Ginger's drums had been driven away in the horse box, you know. And I didn't see Ginger at all after that. That was the end of it all, you know.
Right. Right. And going on to about the mid-80s and Chronicle of the Black Sword.
Yeah.
Now that was a big show as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, just as a way of how you bring your shows and your music together, can you take us through how that,
Well,
what it was all about, how you brought in the writers, the theme of it, you know?
the idea was with that, which is Elric, which is the Stormbringer. It's about a sword, just like computers, you know, sucking the soul. Computers suck your soul away, and now that's the idea. This is our latest project at the moment. It's very similar. Michael Moorcock had written this 5-book series about Elric at Stormbringer, an albino warrior who had this sword. Very wonderful stories, actually. And we thought, wow, perhaps we should have a go at doing this on stage. So we asked Michael, could we do this? You know, yeah, you know, any help you need, go ahead and do it. So I read all the books and actually brought it down to sort of one book, as it were, so we could do it as a stage show. We got in touch with Tony Carrera, the mime artist who used to work with us in the 70s.
Yeah.
Chris, my girlfriend, was Zara Zinnia, you know, as princess in the story. We all wrote, all of us wrote together, you know, a lot of the words and the music and so on, you know, as a big sort of presentation, and off we went on tour with it, really. You know.
Right,
Took a lot of doing, I tell you.
How long about are you talking about to get a show like that?
A year.
A year to get it together, and then you take it.
And then sort of take it on the road, and maybe it lasted about 2 years on the road, I think.
And in about '85 there was the first Hawkwind convention.
That's right, in
your fans,
Manchester, yeah.
Your fans are got to be compared to sort of like Deadheads and the Grateful Dead. They are a very loyal bunch of people.
I've got all that on video, actually, funnily enough, down in there.
The 85
pull that door and there's loads of videos.
Of that convention?
There's a video of that whole convention, yeah.
Right.
It was quite strange. Yeah, it was quite interesting, quite hectic, sort of there for about 6 hours, you know, sort of giving talks and various members of the band there signing stuff, loads of stuff, you know. Quite interesting, never done that before.
Right. And in a certain way also your next bass player came as a fan. Wasn't he, Alan Davey?
Yeah, Alan Davey, yeah. He'd been writing to us saying that he was the man for the band, because he used to sort of write these letters and sent us a tape, so we decided, you know, to get him to come down and play, and, you know, he got the part. And also Danny Thompson, which was his buddy. Danny ended up playing drums on the Elric tour, you know.
And then there was that one incident where your two sort of primary writers within the band, Michael Moorcock and Bob Calvert, ended up having a fight backstage.
A skirmish, well, the side of the stage, yeah, but that was in, I think, 1987, 86, 87. At the Rainbow, where we were doing a show, when they had a bit of a skirmish, because Bob was going out with, well, Michael, I think, was in the middle of a divorce. I don't know, can't remember actually. I need a prompt on these things because I can't remember exactly what it was going on then, but something was going on, and Bob was on stage doing the vocal, and he was going to go off, and Michael was going to come on and do his poem, and I sort of playing away there, and I looked across the side of the stage and saw Bob go off, and all of a sudden they started having a struggle and a fight, and all people trying to separate them, you know. Christ, you know, we went on and on, thinking, well, you know, and then Bob come on and took the microphone and carried on. In fact, he was doing this very number here, called Time for Sale, I might add, folks. Well, this was the song.
And sadly, in 1988,
he died, yeah. Great shame, that. Sorely missed, because we had actually started on a new project together called The Earth Ritual, which we were going to do a big stage show, you know, going back to the Earth was the whole idea, because the other one was Space Ritual, going off into space. This one, you know, was sort of all about the Earth, and it's interesting.
Right.
And we actually did, I think we did an EP actually, and came on Flick Knife Records, I think, wasn't it, called The Earth Ritual Preview. In fact, I think Lemmy played on that too, as far as I remember. Yeah, sad.
Yeah. Now, one of the sort of things about Hawkwind that has happened many times, I think it's a great compliment, that, say, someone like Johnny Rotten came into your dressing room in the late 70s and said, it's because of you guys that, you know, we're doing punk.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And if you listen, you know, to tracks like Brainstorm, there's a big kind of punk, proto-punk influence there.
Yeah.
And in the early 90s, with Space Bandit and Electric TP, you're very much going, your name started being Hawkwind and Techno. That kind of link was made.
Well, I don't, because of what we play over the years, I mean, it's like Death Trap. I mean, all these numbers are straight, sort of good, sort of hard, sort of rocky numbers that, and the electronic side of music being very hypnotic, trancey.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never stopped playing. We've been doing this sort of music for years, like Opalocca. If you listen to Opalocca from 1974, I think it is, it's just sort of very straight bass and drum, sort of. In fact, I played the bass on that, believe it or not, folks. Actually, Lemmy was asleep. He's been up for about 4 nights on the trot. He never played it. I played it, but stuff like that, which really is, it doesn't date. You know, it still sounds in vogue now. I mean, so really, what we're doing now with Richard. I mean, Richard's been in the band since 1988. I mean, Richard's really into sort of doing lots of weird techno stuff, which he does. I mean, I suppose really we just sort of carry on as we are. You know, we haven't really changed that much. We're still space rock, as it were, but the influences, we influence a lot of bands around us, maybe, you know.
Right. And you were basically down to a trio. That was the 90s. You went into the 90s, as a trio, yeah.
Yeah.
And that remains to this day, really, yeah.
Well, yeah, we had a go. I mean, it was hard work doing being a trio. You know, we did Electric TP and Business of the Future. What else did we do? I think we did another one, didn't we, as a trio? But it was hard going on stage, you know, 3 people. You know, we had all our keyboards on automatic pilot and stuff like that. So it was quite hard work. You know, It was nice to get a few more people back in the band to take the pressure off, you know.
That's for gigs, yeah.
Yeah.
And who are the people in concern?
What, now?
Yeah.
Well, we've got Simon House playing with us again, and we've got Hugh Lloyd-Langton playing lead guitar with us.
Right.
We have Tim Blake, who used to sort of play with Gong, you know, and worked with us in the 70s, of course, 79, 80 on the Levitation album and all that. He's a good friend of ours, lives in Brittany, and he's working with us too. So, I mean, we're still sort of, you know, doing our cycle.
Yeah.
But the mainstay is, you know, like I say, is Alan and Richard. I mean, they are sort of the mainstay, driving force, really, you know, for quite a few years.
Right.
I mean, they never get much credit for it because people always mention, you know, go back, oh yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh yes, in the 70s and so on. But I mean, Alan's bass player, he's a good pokey bass player, you know, and Richard's a real good drummer.
Yeah.
And they've been like the engine room for this band for the past 14 years. So.
And on your 30th anniversary, you didn't have Stacia, but you had Sam Fox.
We had Sam Fox, yeah, I know, great, eh?
Was that a pleasant experience for the band?
Well, yeah, she's really lovely, Sam is, you know, we really like her because she did Give Me Shelter, because Richard sung the song Give Me Shelter with Sam, you know, when we did that for the homeless, because all the proceeds went to charity for that. That's how we got in. Sam actually asked, when they actually asked, what band would you like to work with, and she said, "Oh, I'd love to work with Hawkwind." And then we got her agent phone us up and say, "Look, Sam would like to do this number with you," and we had to learn how to play Give Me Shelter and all that. So that's how that all got involved, and she came down here, just where we are now, and recorded it, you know, got it all together. Right. And that was it.
Right. For just a general thing before we finish, and thanks very much for so much time. You, Hawkwind, have used acid to the benefit of the music. Has this always been the case?
What, you mean now?
Or just generally, just going back to 33?
Years ago, yeah. I mean, it was always, I suppose really, you have to be careful with all drugs. I mean, you know, drugs can be abused really quite easily, especially in the rock and roll business, because, you know yourself, I mean, there's plenty of them around. If you want it, you can get it, you know, but I think, in the 70s, it was treated more as a special thing, you know, where you'd have like gurus. I mean, when people started taking LSD, they always had characters who wouldn't take it, who could help you along the road when things got a bit dodgy, you know. So consequently, you know, it's not so much now. People just take it as a sideline, have a good fun on it. But I think it was more spiritual then, you know.
Yeah.
So consequently, then there was a lot more sort of spiritualistic sort of meaning to drugs than there are now, really, you know.
Well, it's
Times have changed.
It's linked to dance, it's dance culture.
Yeah, it's more fun, you see. I mean, you know, maybe, probably not as strong. I mean, we were taking LSD that was really strong. I mean, you know, everything used to melt and all sorts of things used to happen. And you used to freak out. I mean, you used to push yourself to the extreme to see how far you could go. You know, your little voice saying you're going to go mad in a minute. And
on stage.
Yeah, and off, you know. And then you go and see if you could, you know, and sometimes some people would never come back and they would be mad, you know. It's dangerous. And that's why you need people around, you know, to help.
Right.
So,
and
got to be careful.
Luckily there was that always within your entourage.
Yeah, I mean, we used to be naughty and take it just for the fun of it and go nutty and take mixtures of things you shouldn't, you know. But,
and it's sometimes not always did it help the music. You were saying earlier about a drummer who was not into acid but was into coke and
and he had,
his timing
went up the creek, and it'd be one day it'd be up, next day it'd be down, you know. It'd be awful on stage, you know. Things would be slowing down, you know, and other days it'd be going faster and faster. I mean, it's the same with all these things, you know. And apart from that, you still got to remember you're playing to an audience that are paying to come and see you. They don't want to see you a wreck, you know, can't get it together. Though it might be fun sometimes, because I mean, as you know, lots of characters in this business do take them and go nutty on stage. It looks great. Yeah. Someone going mad, you know. If, it's all right if the cameras are there, but they can't do it every night, you know. Else you conk out.
Dave Brock, Captain Hawkwind, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much too.